Hi everyone, and welcome back to my next video, which is uncut. Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how to properly set up the DSM editor in QRadar. First, let's log in to the QRadar that we've set up in the previous video, right? As you can see, it's blank right now. We're just starting off. Okay, just to basically reintroduce the filter that I've done, I've basically filtered off all the audit log for the internal systems, system notification, and health, right? So that we can actually see the events that we want to see, right? Let's just do a quick check to make sure that our log sources are still good. I'm having an error. Okay, that's not a good sign. Okay, we'll look at that in a bit. Uh, Okay, so what I'm going to try and do is to go to the Cisco endpoint, M for endpoint console and check out what is the issue there. Okay, let's try and enable and disable. Right, let's try and restart the 11 event collector service. stop the we have stop the MQ, then we have start the MQ again. It looks like we are collecting logs again. Log sources. Okay, seems that the MQ has gone down over the night, and by restarting the collector service, it comes up, right? These are unfortunately some of the common challenges, in a demo environment because we might not have the necessary resource, and it's a test environment, right? So ideally, when you have the right specs, right configuration, and right architecture setup, you shouldn't have this error all the time. Okay, so we're good. So what I'm going to do is to basically re-simulate an event on my cloud sandbox. So let's go back to my sandbox. Let's sign in. And then let's do a quick check of the AMP. Let's look at the history. Let's check the quarantine file. The last file was at 7:25:14 a.m. I've not really synchronized all my time, so you can see that the timestamps are a little bit off in the various setup, right? Let's extract file and then the password. Okay, let's go back. We should have, let's just refresh it. Okay, we have simulated a new event, with a different time. Okay, what I did not show you the last time is actually on the dashboard of my test environment. Okay, I'm going to show you. So you can see we have a new event, right? That has triggered off, a so the timestamp is correct. 1st of August where I am, right? If you look at the time stamp earlier on, right? A file was triggered. We saw that we were using 7gg.exe to try and open up the .exe file. Okay, and what happens is it was quarantined, and we got an event log that mentioned about the thread and the IOCs, right? The indicator that AMP has picked up. Okay, that's what we saw, or what we are seeing in the Cisco M for Endpoint. Then let's look at the QRadar console again. Okay, let's go to the QRadar admin console. Okay, if we move back to log activities and do a last 5 minutes, we should see that the thread has been detected, right? And it's been detected by demo amp, the log source, right? We saw two events matching what we saw on M for endpoint, right? Quarantine success and potential malicious software. Okay, so I have done the let me check whether did I do the mapping, right? So one thing that usually happens, right? If we did not do the mapping, right, which I'll show you. Let's go back to open up the DSM editor. So as you can see, I've already done some customization, right? So default, right? The system was trying to pick up the IP address. What you see here is that by default, might be because the format has changed, uh, or it's really on the QRadar side, in terms of how they create the DSM, right? So the default DSM doesn't seem to be able to pick up the IP address of the destination IP. And if we go over to the source IP address, same thing, right? I've created my own regex, right? So if I turn off all the custom regex, you will see that the source IP is also not detected. There are a lot of other things when it comes to um, SIEM, right? That you need to actually have the basic in place, right? Things like source IP, destination IP, and of course, right, you need to enrich the systems with whether it's the thread name, the protocols, etc. So that's one of the key challenges, with SIEM, uh, or customers going down the route of SIEM, right? So do I'm them, do not I'm them, right? So either way, it is a very, very tough fight for the cybersecurity practitioner, right? So it's a reason why I have stopped, doing implementation and day two advisory, because I realized a lot of my time during then was spent trying to make sure that the data is clean, right? It's basically, sanitized and massage in such a way that it is meaningful, right, for the threat analyst sitting behind the screen or in the SOC, trying to make sure that the network is protected. Having said that, right, it's something that is a good experience, right? I learned a lot during those days, and it keeps me curious, and it keeps me updated on the threats that are out there, right? So this is a very good exercise for anybody who wants to go into cybersecurity, cyber defense, whether you are looking at red team and blue teams. The things that you learn in understanding logs and understanding threats does help, right, in the long run, right? So what I want to show you is basically a quick way, right? I always call it a quick and dirty way to basically make sure that by quickly looking at the logs that are coming in, I can actually quickly, look at the DSM or the log event mapping and quickly create a, modified DSM, right, to basically capture the necessary information that I need. Do bear in mind, right? If you uh the with most SIEM, right? I've done three in my lifetime, right? Deployment on three different kind of SIEM. Most of them are very, very similar in terms of concept, right? The more important thing to take note is that most SIEM does not go back, right, and remap the events that they have collected, right? From a security standpoint, there is a reason, right? You do not want to go back and modify past logs, right? Whether it's because of non-repudiation, or you want to make sure that the data are tamper proof, right? So a lot of the SIEM are built in such a way that you do not tamper the logs that has been collected already. So the good news is that I've done this mapping previously, so you can see the IP address has already been mapped, right? So, but if you are doing this as a fresh integration or fresh install, then we need to basically do this, right? The challenge with with getting log sources is that there are, you can't get all the log sources, right? Or sample log sources you have out there, right? It's just too many of them, right? So usually, where I used to tell my delivery consultant is that set up a sandbox, right? Set up a test environment, test out the logs, right? In your test environment, create the DSM or modify them before you put it into production, right? Because you really do not want to mess up things in the production, right? And then the good thing with most SIEM solution out there, they allow you to replay logs, right? So if you can get a hold of sample logs, you can actually replay them in the system itself and do your parser mapping before you deploy them, right? And that's why if somebody charge you for some of this work behind the scene, do understand it is not an easy task, right? Especially when you have hundreds of log sources, and thousands or hundreds of thousands of events that you need to basically pass in and make sure that it's done correctly. Okay, so without further ado, let me go in and look at one of the ways to map, right? So you can always go like what I just shown you. Um, Click on the event logs and then right click and then go into the DSM editor and come to this screen, right? There are many ways to do it. I'm going to show you one of the ways that I have been doing for a very long time, something that I'm never very good at, and it's very tedious. It's through regex, right? For any programmers or for any security practitioner, regex I would always encourage, is one of the key skill set that you would probably want to spend some time with, because it goes with you for a very, very long while, right? Whether you are doing a simple grep from the Linux console or you're doing your programming, right? Regex search really, really helps, all right? And if you go into malware analysis, that really, really helps me, helping me reduce the amount of time I need to go figure out, the syntax, cleaning up the code, and etc. Right? So what you want to do, right? When you first start to try and map, is that there's this thing called property configuration. Click on override system behavior. When you first come in, this should be empty, right? So what you do is click on edit, right? Select the expression type that you want to do, right? So like I've mentioned, there are a lot of new ways, especially with API. JSON has become very popular, right? But what I'm going to show you is the old school regex configuration. So what it does is that you need to basically look in the events itself, right, for a expression that you want to identify and a field that you want to capture, right? You can always read the information. It'll give you some idea on what you need to do, right? So what I want to do is to capture for destination IP is the external IP, right? It might not be the best way. It might not be the data that I need, but just based on the log source, I'm going to do a quick and dirty map of the information that is sent in. So one thing that I want to look at is the external IP, which is, I presume, right, destination IP that I'm interested in. So what I'm going to do here is to basically identify, right, this source, right? So for those of you who are familiar with regex, you know that you need to make sure that you map the string properly, right? Of course, most of the events hopefully doesn't change very often, right? Things are changing these days. Every upgrade, things might change and break, right? However, with JSON, things should be a lot better, right? So get that string that you want to basically look for in the event, right? Which is external IP, double quote, colon, double quote, right? Is what I'm looking for. Next, we're going to capture and display, right, that IP address that we want to capture, right? So I'm going to do a very simple regex, right? There are a lot more variation. Regex is very powerful if you know the syntax. So what I'm going to do is do look for digits, right? I'm going to look for the 4 octet of the IP address. So for a start, I'm going to look for all the digit in the first octet, right? And then followed by the dot, right? So you're not seeing things being mapped out nicely, right? I should have shown you this earlier. What you want to do is basically create a open and close bracket so that you can see the data, right, that is being highlighted and captured as you do work on the regex. This by far, right, based on the other, based on the 3 SIEM I have done, right, in terms of day one implementation and day two advisory, right, it's actually quite one of the better one I've seen, right? You can actually test it and it's very, very fast, right? So slash digit plus will capture all the digits, right? And before slash dot, right? So that's what this regex look at. And we are going to look at the next octet slash digit, sorry, right, slash digit. Okay, as you can see, slash D, it will only look for the next digit. But if I do a plus, it will basically look for all the digit, right, in that octet, right? Because you can see 67, and whenever it detects a non-digit, in this case, it will stop the matching, right? And then same thing with a slash or text. So for IP address, it's very, very easy, right? So that's why you can see that, without much effort, I'm doing it, right? Because that is the fundamental of mapping of events, right? And then slash D, right? Same thing. I'm going to capture the whole octet followed by the dot, right? And then slash D plus. So you can see that it stops, right, when we saw the double quote. Okay, so this is where we want all that we want, right? So if you let's go back to the destination IP, you can see that now it captured this as a destination IP. And the good thing for QRadar is that once they see this for text, they actually is able to recognize this as an IP address. And this is important because when you start integrating QRadar with other form or any other solution, right, being able to understand that this is an IP address is actually important, right? So when I start to look at or show you the integration with SecureX, you will see how important this piece of information is. And if it's not done correctly, it becomes a challenge, right? I'm not going to do IPv6 in this video because that requires a little bit more understanding of the data format and how do you map it, right? So, but as of right now, V4, right? Mapping is good enough for us. And then the next thing that you want to do is the format the string, right? So if I look, so what I'm going to do is going to go with the example $1, right? So when I do this and click OK, right, it actually, as you can see, pass over the IP address, which is mapped by the regex in the open and close bracket, right? So that is how easy it is to quickly map out IP address, right? So same thing, I'm going to go down to my source IP, right? Click on override. I already have the same setup done, right? And I'm going to save it, right? So if you do this, what it does, it allows QRadar to map the IP address as we see here, right? Okay, sorry, let's go to the last 5 minutes. Okay, and what I'm going to do is going to show you the last 24 hours so that you can see, right? So you can see this is actually being mapped, right? Let me see, where is last 7 days? Okay, it goes into this already. Okay, let's look at the store, right? The store is actually the, you know, uh, the events, right? That basically is created when um, the event is stored, right? So you don't really have to look at this. So one of the filter that you might be able to turn on is really to remove the store event if you do not need to, look at it, right? From a certificate perspective, from whether the logs is trusted, etc. So this gives you the event. So uh, I usually won't turn off that in my usual production environment so that I actually get to see that the data are being stored properly. But for this demo, I'm going to turn it off, right, so that I can get to my log source. So I'm going to add filter, right? We can look at you can actually put search result message or log source, right? So I'm going to look at log sources index and then does not equal to search result 2, as you can see over here. I'm going to add that filter in. Now, when I look at my options, it's cleaner now, right? So let's look at last 30 minutes. Okay, so let's go and look at the last 24 hours. I should have that. No, has it been so long since my last setup? Oops, sorry. Let me just pull this out to the last 3 days. Okay, so as you can see, right over here, when I first started the testing, right, which is yesterday, right, you can see that the initial logs are all passing without the IP address. Okay, so this is what I meant by, you need to tidy this up right from the start, because when you right click on the IP address, right, there are actually more options that you can do. When we integrate with SecureX, you will see that you can actually do a quick analysis of the endpoint, right, by launching the investigation right here, right. So that's very much what I want to share with you in terms of how do you, uh, you know, um, make sure that you do your DSM addition after you set up your end for endpoint, right? So hopefully this is a shorter video than the previous one. I believe the last one that I did was 30 minutes. It was a hard time trying to squeeze almost a 4 hours video into a 30 minutes video, right? So that this part, um, you know, uh, was actually a part of my previous video, but it wasn't. It was hard to basically sanitize, cut and paste it. So therefore, I thought of creating a new one so that it gives you an idea. Okay, so that is very much on how do you map the parcel so that you can make good use of the information, right, that is being collected, right? So that's pretty much what I have here. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you, right, is actually the resources available, right? So one of there are a couple of resources that are useful, right? And for any of you who are looking at integrating the SIEM with Cisco Endpoint, Cisco does have quite comprehensive documentation based on the API call. So as you can see in my previous video, right, we are actually using API to create event stream, and then using the RabbitMQ with QRadar as a MQ client, right, to get that data, passed in through the M4 endpoint. There are a couple of things that was in the documentation that was interesting that I did not haven't figured out, is that we'll go into that a little bit later. So on the endpoint documentation, they actually have quite a good high-level explanation, right, on how do you create event stream, right? For those of you who likes to basically work around with Python, they actually have a sample Python script to do the event creation. I've shown you curl. You can do Python, and you can use Postman, right? So whichever is useful for you, whichever you're familiar with, right? And then if you go into DevNet, right, which is what Cisco, a very good, development community that Cisco is, building up, right? You can actually go in and look at the um, APIs that are being exposed for the Cisco security product itself, right? And the reason why I want to share about this is that when you go into this documentation, right, you can actually see, explanations of the APIs that are available, right? And these are very useful for you, to test the environment, right? I'll do a separate video and also maybe show you how the Universal Cloud API that IBM has might be a useful resources to, pull in logs from the M for endpoint, right? If you do not need a persistent critical, setup. right? So yeah, just do take note. There's another thing that I wanted to share, and of course you can go into the GitHub repository. There are a lot of APIs, code or repository that has the pre-built API calls, right, that are available, right, in case you want to take this and do your own modification or understand how it works, right? Of course, for those who are testing, QRadar does have sample apps, sample event messages that you can work based on, which is something useful, right? The only challenge is over here is that the event ID and some of these things might change, right? So that's why it's useful to go to the for endpoint documentation, because over here you will be able to see what are the events that you can ingest into, right? So, okay, the one thing that I wanted to highlight here is that events will sit in queue for 10 days maximum, at which point they will be deleted. Yep, so that's why it's important to check for the log source error that I've shown you earlier in the video, because if the event log source is down for more than 10 days, right, the events might be deleted, right? So you might lose logs along the way. So in a typical day two operation for a SIEM environment, one of the key use case that the customers will always ask the implementer is always to make sure that they get a daily, right, report of the health of the log source, right, which QRadar of the box, you probably could configure that to send an alert if the event source goes down, so that the team can come in and restart the event source like what I did. Okay, but you over here you can see, right, what are the events ID type, right, that you want that you can actually get from the API call, right? So this is important because these are what is out of the box that you can actually detect, right? Or any SIEM, like and in our case, QRadar could detect, right? And based on the event ID, I believe QRadar out of the box has already classified them. As you can see, the threat detected and quarantine, right, was automatically mapped, right, without me having to do any further customization. And then the other three is really quarantine failure and recall detection. That is key. This is what I will always say is critical, right? And if you are doing any form of threat hunting or any form of incidents, when you see this, right, and that is where you want to fire off an offense and immediately investigate. That means that the system has been compromised, right? And then there are more sample events, right, that you can get from the API documentation as well. So that's pretty much what I have, right? Hope this video is useful, right? It's a second part of the integration of QRadar with Cisco Secure Endpoint. Hope you enjoyed the video and find it useful. Give me your comments and feedback if you would like to drill down a little bit deeper in some of the integrations. And if you have any question, feel free to drop me a comment, right? This is not my full-time job, right? So I do not track and look at the comments all the time, right? I do this to help the community, right, to really look at how some of the integrations or some of the requests that I get, right? So I have a full-time job. I do help partner and customers, and I do demos and events, right? And when I get into preparations and doing some of these things, and I realize that there are not enough YouTube video out there to help me get this done, then I might create a video just to make sure that the next person who is doing a similar things like me, whether it's demo, test lab, or even trying to figure out production implementation, hopefully this video can be useful, right? But a lot of the things that I am sharing here might not be recommended for production. So always check with the implementer or the vendor, right? If you are not sure about certain things, best practices and such, right? So with that, thank you very much. Take care, right? Stay safe and stay tuned for the next video.
I love you, Daddy. And thank you everyone for watching.